The question I am most frequently asked is, who must I vote for? The country is in a desperate state, and there are so many political parties contesting the general elections. I'm struggling to make a wise choice, being fully aware of the consequences of my vote. I fully empathize with this dilemma. There is much at stake for South Africa in the general elections on 29th May. However, although I cannot tell you who to vote for, I can provide factual information to help you make informed choices. Voters have the power to effect change in South Africa, so that's why it's so important to vote this elections. Most political parties have published manifestos outlining their policy stance on key issues. It also provides insight into their political ideology. However, you and I must not only evaluate what political parties tell us, but more importantly, what they are not telling us. For example, the country has experienced zero load shedding over the past month. In the months prior to April, the country suffered blackouts of up to 6 to 8 hours a day, wreaking havoc with the normal social and business life. How did we suddenly achieve zero blackouts? The only reasonable conclusion to arrive at is that it's an election year and the ANC regime plans to deceive the electorate that they are on top of things, and nothing can be further from the truth. If the government can keep the lights on prior to an election, why can't it do it at any other time to revive our ailing economy? And this proves the ANC do things for their own purposes, and also proves the ANC governs in its own best interest, not in the interest of the people of South Africa. Remember, President Cyril Ramaphosa promised a new dawn and an end to corruption in 2018. However, corruption escalated alarmingly during Ramaphosa's failed presidency. Ramaphosa also ignored the Zondo Commission recommendations. Most of the ANC officials implicated in serious corruption are not only secure in high-paying government jobs up till this day, but feature prominently on the ANC candidates list for provincial legislatures and parliament, which means they're going to be back if the ANC wins a majority on the 29th of May. When one considers the utter devastation caused by ANC corruption and incompetence, then not one single citizen in this country should vote for this criminal enterprise. The manifestos of the EFF and MK parties reads like a blueprint for political and economic disaster. It will transform South Africa into Venezuela or Cuba. One can only describe it as national suicide. As a result, voters, especially Christian voters, are left with the choice of voting for political parties or independent candidates that best reflect their values. The following voter's guide is a helpful illustration of the policy positions of some larger and smaller parties. We must vote strategically to obtain the best outcomes. Conservative-leaning parties are an option. For example, the DA governs efficiently, but its woke ideology is a major concern. The Western Cape is reputedly the best governed province in South Africa, but the DA is also implementing sexual orientation and gender identity policies in Western Cape schools to indoctrinate innocent children with LGBTQ and gender identity propaganda. This must not be tolerated. Consequently, if the DA wins less than 50% of the vote in the Western Cape and has to form a coalition with a more conservative party, then its woke policies will be restrained by its coalition partner. Thus, we get efficient governance minus the woke insanity. This scenario is also possible on a national level. Polls indicate ANC's support will decline to about 40%. Christian citizens must fervently pray that God will intervene in His mercy and grace and confound the wicked, so that South Africa will have a coalition government of national unity after 29th May that excludes the destructive ANC, EFF and MK parties. This means we must encourage everybody within our influence to vote for non-corrupt, competent conservative parties. If these parties find themselves in a governing coalition of national unity, they can restrain the liberal parties from advancing harmful ideologies. This general election will be different. For the first time, we will receive 3 ballot papers and not 2 at the polls. First is the national ballot, which contains a list of 52 political parties contesting 200 seats in the National Assembly. This ballot will be consistent across the nation. Second is the regional ballot, which is due It's to vote for political parties and independent candidates contesting the 200 seats reserved for provinces in the National Assembly. This makes up the 400 seats of the National Assembly. Unlike the first national ballot, this ballot includes only the independent candidates and political parties that are contesting a particular region, for example, Gauteng, Western Cape, Northern Cape, etc. Third is the provincial ballot, which is unique to each province. Voters will use this ballot to elect political parties and independent candidates to serve in their provincial legislature. You could vote for different parties on the national and provincial ballots strategically if you so wish. Parties appear in alphabetical order on ballot papers at the moment. However, this will change after the ballot draw to determine the final order of parties on the ballot papers on election day. I hope this all makes sense. Every registered voter must vote on election day and must vote wisely for the good of the nation. We must also pray fervently for a peaceful and favorable outcome to this election. But whatever the results, remember that God remains sovereign and is in control. So keep on praying for South Africa.